Hello and welcome. Today's demonstration is to show you how to create a template in gloEMR. The first thing that you'll know is that you need to create categories. So if you go under Edit Category, you will come to this screen. Inside Edit Category, you will see if I put it into category type order, and now I'm seeing that I have all of these category types in which I can create templates into. Some of these categories are used for actually doing the doctor's documentation and chart notes. Other categories are associated to different modules within gloEMR. Example, messages are templates that show up when you use the messaging process. PT protocols or nurse notes are under PT protocol and nurse note sections, as well as referring letters and orders have associated templates. So realize that some of these categories link back to other portions of gloEMR. So this is where your templates are created or designed by category. If you go under Edit Templates this time, so templates and category are the two areas you'll be spending your time. The first area, or the most common area once you create your categories, is under templates. So out here are all the categories I just showed you. SOAP is a category in which our physicians actually do their chart notes. So SOAP notes, SOAP stands for Subjective, Objective, Assessment, and Plan, which is really how your physicians learn to document while they're in school. So we've created the category of SOAP to be the area that shows up when you go into do a chart note on a patient. So if I'm under SOAP and I hit New, I can then create a new SOAP note from scratch or a new template. And actually I can name it whatever I would like. So I'm going to name this Demo How to Build a Template. And then I can pick my category over here as well, so I didn't have to pick SOAP from outside, but it's common for me to do that so it remembers which category I want it to go into. And I can also associate a template to a provider or to all providers. So I have the option to build them separately or individually. Once I build one, I can also do a Save As and actually apply the same template out to many physicians with maybe making some minor changes per provider. So just keep that in mind. You'll notice that the document that you're seeing at this moment is a Word document, so you have all of your Word tools up on your toolbar that you'll be using to create your document with. Usually a note starts with a letterhead. So if you just double click in the top portion of the document, you'll notice, just like in regular Microsoft Word, which this is, because Word is embedded into gloEMR, I have the ability to create my own letterhead at this point, or my own header. I could always copy and paste any type of logos or letterhead that I want. I can also import notes which will already have possibly my headers on them. The other option that I have is up here on our toolbar. You'll see an icon called Header, and if I click on Insert Header, it actually inserted the header that I have stored into my gloEMR admin under Clinic Setup, under the Clinic Other Details area. I can actually create a logo path that stores my header, so all I have to do when I'm creating new notes as a practice is click on this button, and it's as simple as that to insert my header. So again, that was stored under gloEMR Admin under the Clinic Settings Other tab. When I go into a chart note now, I'm actually using Word just as I normally would, and so most templates start off with things like the patient's name. So I could type patient name as my header and put in a colon and space, and then on the left hand side what you're going to see is data dictionary items, and so these are subcategorized to help you find things a little bit easier. And because I'm adding patient information, I'm going to come down to the patient section of my dictionary links. Now under here I can look for a patient name. So here's my patient name category. If I double click on that, that just inserted what we call a liquid link, which would automatically put the patient's name in here when we're using a template. I could have also done something like put in last name and then did my liquid link for last name. And then I could tab or space and put in maybe my first name. and then find my patient's first name. So you'll see that there's many ways to build these items out there. The third way I'm going to show you inserting this information is, so far I've written or I typed patient name, last name, first name, but really on the left hand side over here in our data dictionary box there is this checkbox that says include caption. If I check include caption and then I double click on first name, it'll actually build that entire thing for me. So then I can just tab and go to my patient's last name. So it just saved me a lot of clicking or a lot of typing. So that's what include caption is. It will put the header or whatever name that you're adding to the note. So I'm going to, I accidentally hit copy there, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that information. And then I'm going to enter, and I'm going to put in the patient's age, which is stored. I could do date of birth, and of course complete with my include caption, or age. Age isn't actually an item under patient, so sometimes you have to find where these items are stored. In this case, age is stored under the others category. So I can double click on age, and now I have the date of birth and the patient's age as part of my note. So just keep in mind that sometimes you have to find where the stuff is located. It's most intuitive, but in some cases we create other categories for information. So please get to know your data dictionary links to help you create good notes for your providers. At the beginning of a note, normally they start off with a chief complaint. So again, I could go under patient. Chief complaint is stored under patient. So if I double click on chief complaint, I will get that as the beginning of my note. The next part about a note is actually their histories. So I can create any type of history heading that I want, and keep in mind that I'm just using the standard font that came with Word, but I certainly can use items like changing my fonts. I can make them bigger, I can bold, I can underline, I can do any type of Word changes that I want to make just by using typical Word functions. So what is it that you want to do to make your note look special? I can also color code them and put them in boxes and headers, etc. But I'm going to go ahead and break down this chart note. It's not going to look really pretty. I'm just trying to show you all the functionality of the items that you can do. So I could do something like insert a table and just make it a one-column table, and I could put history inside here. Then I can also change how it looks by giving it a background color, for example. So maybe I want it to have a pretty purple background color, and make that entire note possibly out there. Or maybe not. So anyway, I can, cut. After I create history, and I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. Okay, starting all over. Once I change my fonts to make my chart note as pretty as I want it to be, I can certainly do any items that I want, and by using typical Microsoft Word. I'll show you other options soon. In the history category, you will actually see under history I have my headings that are created as part of my history. So again, I can include my caption, and I can just double click on my allergies. I could click on my family history. I could click on my social history, my past medical conditions, any operations or surgeries that I've done. And I just double clicked, and so they kind of formed as if it was a paragraph, but more than likely you're going to build something that looks a little more uniformed. And so I'm just sticking my cursor in between each of those areas and creating it as a column instead. I could have also done something like inserted a table. So if I say I'm going to insert a table, and I'm going to make that table be a couple of columns wide and a couple of columns down, I can actually insert tables this way and put my category headers inside a table format. So I could say, here's my allergies, and then here's my family history, and here's my social history, So I can create these things to look however I want. If I like them better in a table format, or if I wanted to have the system insert information, but maybe put dictation points in, which is just the brackets. So it is the brackets next to your P on your keyboard, the square brackets create dictation points. So I can make these things look as pretty or as organized as I want by using tables. I can also, which by using tables, I should say, it'll actually keep things from running into a paragraph and moving stuff down to another line item when you're inside your notes. So using tables is great. Don't forget that when you do use a table, that you can certainly do things like if I go to borders and shading, I can say I don't want borders and shading and say none, and now my template still looks pretty open, but if my allergies run into this area, it'll just go down to the next line instead of messing up my dictation points or my format. So using tables and hiding the grid lines is a very common and nice way to create smooth looking templates. So don't forget your tables. The other thing that I can do after I get associated with all of my history items is just start, finishing out my system. We have something called liquid data dictionary items, which these are liquid links that help us with our E&M coding. And that'll be more of an advanced area of building our templates. So there will be another advanced class teaching you how to do that. But I just wanted you to know that you have the option to use some of these items as well. So here's an example of review of systems. So once I insert my review of systems, it actually built my review of systems in a table format for me, and with giving my providers the ability to have dictionary data points for documenting their notes. So I can come out here and say I need to insert my data dictionary, or not my data dictionary, but my dictation points. Sorry about that. So by creating my dictation points like that, then when my physicians actually dictate into these particular areas, it'll actually count towards their E&M coding guidelines, which is something that the providers are usually interested in doing. So I'm going to go ahead and just push this onto another page just to give us a clean look. I can also do things like get rid of the third column. So I can right click and hit delete column. I can then also hide my grid lines the way that I did the first time using my borders and shading. So borders and shading, and say remove those. And so now my review of systems is as pretty as the rest of my note, and yet it gives me the ability to do E&M coding with it. So the next part of a chart note is, and I think I actually missed a part, we can kind of come back up here, but usually associated either just before or just after history is their HPI. So I'm going to go ahead and say I'm doing their HPI, and I'm going to always set up a dictation point behind HPI. It's a very common place that the physicians like to do dictation. So I can set that up. As easy as that. So I have chief complaint, HPI, and then their histories. And of course, it's not really as pretty as it should be because I've changed my font on part of my template and not all of it. So let's go ahead and make that a little bigger for our viewing pleasure. So I have chief complaint, HPI, history, review of systems, and then of course we get into the actual physical exam. And again, you can set up or create your physician's normals as you would like to. We can use liquid data to create physical exams as well. And then the last part of a note, or I should say, you could also just dictate. And then the last part of a chart note is normally the physician's assessment and plan. So depending on how your physician uses their system, they might call it assessment and plan or impression and plan, and they have different names for it, but basically this is where they pull in their diagnosis and their treatments. So if I come back out to the left side and find my diagnosis, I can click on the plus sign, insert my diagnosis, and then I'm going to go down to treatment. which is alphabetical at this point, and I can say I want my treatment. So I can create my assessment and plan to look pretty nice by inserting it that way. So the other portions that I can do inside a note to kind of fancy things up a little is I can build paragraphs. And so if my physician likes to do his HPI, for example, to say that his patient is a common thing is a patient is a 38-year-old female, they can actually put things in there as if as a paragraph. So they could say the patient is and then they're going to want to insert age. And if you remember where age is stored under others. So it'll automatically insert, oops, I didn't really want that one this time, did I? So you got to remember to shut off your include caption if you don't want that information to show up. So I can say the patient is and it'll put in the patient's age automatically. I'm going to get rid of this dictation point for right now while I'm building the rest of this paragraph. The patient is a 38-year-old, and then I'm going to pull in their gender, so it'll be a 38-year-old female if the patient is a female. And so they can actually create paragraphs that actually start to sound like they dictate without having to actually dictate it every single time. The other thing that they can do is build items like checkboxes and or drop-down list. So the first thing I'm going to show you is a drop-down list. So I can actually say this physician likes to call the patient by their last name, so Mr. or Mrs. with the last name. So I could say something like, thank you for referring, and then I want to build a drop-down list to say if it's a Mr., a Mrs., or a Miss. And so up in my top toolbar is this Insert DDL, which stands for Insert Drop-Down List. If I click on Insert Drop-Down List, I can actually say that this is the title, and then I can say Mr. and add, and then Mrs. and add, and then Miss and add, and or Miss and add, maybe even Doctor and add. So you can create these to be any items that you want. So I'm just creating a drop-down list for my providers to pick. A really cool trick here is to actually build a blank or an underline. And that way, if you use that underline as your resource, then, so I'm going to move that to the top of my options and get rid of choose an item. Then what happens is I have a blank line, so when my physician is actually looking at his note, he remembers there's a drop-down list to go and pick from. So I can save that, and then my choose an item actually becomes an underline. So now I say, thank you for referring, and it'll say Mr. or Miss, and then I'm going to go with the patient's last name. So I'm going to say the patient's last name. So thank you for referring Mr. Jones or Mrs. Jones to my office. And then I can actually keep this drop-down list as an option, so when they're actually out there using the note, they'll get their option to pick Mr., Mrs., Miss, or Doctor. So drop-down lists are pretty easy to build as well. You do need to copy and paste them if you're going to use the same drop-down list in multiple notes. So one recommendation is to create a template out on your system that has things like drop-down lists in it and things that you commonly use that you can just copy and paste into all of your notes so you don't have to start them all over from scratch. That was just a helpful hint, but I think it's fun. So I'm going to go down to physical exam, or actually I'm just going to do a yes or no option. So another common review of systems is by yes or no. So some people will say, my review of systems will say, are they having problems with their head, ears, nose, and throat? Or I could have respiratory or cardio. So I can build all kinds of topics out here to say if they're normals or not. So my review of systems may be normals, yes or no. So we'll say normal, and then have a yes or no, and then a dictation spot after that. So this is kind of like my header here. So I might go ahead and underline that area. And then under head, ears, nose, and throat, I can do our insert checkbox. So my normal or abnormal, I guess I need to put that out there. So abnormal. And then wherever I land my cursor, I hit insert checkbox and then just tab until I get to the point where I want my next checkbox. And then tab and insert checkbox. And tab and insert checkbox. So these might not be the best options to show you, but I think you'll get the idea that you can pick insert checkboxes and use these in many areas on the notes. It's a very common thing for the physicians to like to do. So that's an example of doing drop-down list and insert checkbox. So it's a very simple process to do. You can also do things like insert diagrams or insert files, etc. But I'm not going to get into that today. I don't think it's necessary, as this is supposed to be a light review of how to do a template. But don't be afraid to go out and find something. So if you do have a file out there that you use, you can certainly insert them by grabbing something that's stored out on your system already. Always cut and paste is an option as well. So at the end of my note, what I want you to see is that sometimes with referring providers, so I'm just spacing this out only for demonstration purposes, but a lot of times when we're doing referring doctor letters, the referring doctors don't want to see a note that is 10 or 12 pages long. Okay, maybe 3 or 4 pages long, but anyway, they don't want to see something that's really long. They usually just want to see like the chief complaint or the assessment and plan. So at the top of our screen, what you're going to see is add bookmark, delete bookmark, and show and hide bookmark. I'm going to go ahead and click on show bookmark so that you can see what I'm doing. My cursor's in front of chief complaint, and if I say add a bookmark in front of chief complaint and behind chief complaint, then what's going to happen is that portion of my note is going to actually go to my referring doctor letter. If I then go down to assessment and plan and say before assessment and plan, add a bookmark, and after assessment and plan, add a bookmark. So you always have to do bookmarks in pairs, so you always have to do a beginning and an end, and then what will happen is anything that's put or documented on the chart note in between those two bookmarks can go to my referring doctors. So I can skip all of the history and review of systems and all those things that that provider that referred them to the specialist already knows. They just want to be reminded of, why did I send them to you? And what are you doing now that you've seen them? You've assessed them, given them a diagnosis, and what kind of treatment plan are you doing? So our physicians actually love this part of our gloEMR product. So don't forget your bookmarks. One item to remember about bookmarks is if they are not done in pairs and you have an odd number of bookmarks, then nothing will go to your referring doctors. That could be a common support call that you might get. Hey, our referring doctors are saying they aren't getting any of our assessment and plans. What could be wrong? You would come into the template that you're sending and make sure that you have an even number of bookmarks in your documentation so that your referring providers are getting the right information. So it's that easy to add templates. Don't forget you have colors and all your different items that you can use with regular Microsoft Word. I'm not teaching Microsoft Word today, but I did want to make sure that you understood a little bit about how to use tables, and that you can certainly use things like your fonts and your colors and other things that are important. So maybe allergies are an important part that you want to stand out. Don't forget that you can certainly make it red, and that'll help it stand out in your note. So have a good time building your templates. Thank you.